Hey guys, this is Unit Zero, and today we're going to be talking about Marvel Snap's Series 4 and Series 5 cards. Now this month, February 2023, is the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania season, as it's tied into the new Marvel film that's coming out. We have MODOK as the Season Pass card, but we're going to be focusing today on the cards that are purchasable through the Collector's Token Shop, and specifically the Series 4 and 5 cards. Now remember that Series 4 cards cost 3,000 tokens, while Series 5 cards are double that at 6,000 tokens. And we do have some information about how these cards are going to rotate down through the months. Last month they rotated, I believe, 5 cards down to Series 3, which are essentially going to be free eventually and a lot easier to get. And I expect that pattern to continue. Now, we don't know exactly which cards are going to rotate down, but I am going to make some educated guesses here and say that the cards that did not rotate down last month and that were released in the initial batch of cards in December are going to rotate down this month. So in Series 4, that's going to be Agent Coulson, Atuma, Helicarrier, M'Baku, Maria Hill. And we're not sure about Orca because that was released a lot later than anticipated, but I think the 5 aforementioned cards are going to be candidates for moving down into Series 3, which means that they're going to cost 1,000 tokens or basically be free for people with full Series 3 collections already. And as for Series 5 cards that are moving down, I expect all the new cards that were added in December 2022 to rotate down into Series 4. That includes the Season Pass card Silver Surfer, as well as the 4 cards that were added during the month, Darkhawk, Null, Sauron, and Sentry. So with that in mind, I'm going to be making this tier list and kind of giving my opinions on which cards are worth spending your tokens on this month, and maybe which cards to avoid or which cards to wait until if they drop down in series as expected. So keep in mind that this is not going to be a strength of card tier list necessarily. I will provide some context into obviously how powerful the cards are and how much value you get out of purchasing them from the shop, but this is not necessarily a strongest cards are best value and the weakest cards are should avoid. So just keep that in mind, and let me know if you definitely let me know if you have any different opinions or you think I missed out on anything. But let's get started right away here. So Agent Coulson, I already mentioned. Agent Coulson and Atuma, actually, I mentioned. I expect them to drop down. They've been in the shop at the Series 4 for a couple of months now. So anybody who hasn't purchased them, I don't really see why you should purchase them now. I believe these are going to be rotated down and essentially be free. So I don't think these are worth anybody's tokens, even for whales. Maybe these are just maybe I'll create a new row here. Yeah, wait for drop tier. So I mean, I think whales already have these cards anyway, so this kind of makes more sense to have a wait for drop tier here. Bast used to be a Series 5 card and was just rotated down last month. Bast, I think, is a really strong card. I think really good value at 3,000 tokens in Series 4. I'm going to put Bast over at best value. Personally, I purchased Bast like a day or two after the drop, and I've really been enjoying playing the card. Next up is the, I think, November Season Pass card, Black Panther. So this card rotated down from Season 5 to Season 4 last month. It's possible they could rotate this down into Series 3 next month, but given that it took 2 months for them to rotate it down to Series 4, I'm not anticipating them to do so quickly. So before the Collector's Token Shop was introduced, the Season Pass cards would become free, or essentially enter Pool 3, Series 3 after 2 months. But it seems like they've extended that time period a bit with introduction of the Collector's Token Shop. So I don't expect Black Panther to rotate down until next month, unfortunately. Now Black Panther is a decent card, not the strongest. Offers okay value at 3,000, but there aren't really too many applications for it, so I think I'd put it in the for fun tier. It's not one of the strongest cards out there. But if you have fun with, playing this type of deck, you can play with Shuri, Arnim Zola, all that kind of stuff. Odin. It's definitely a decent card, decent pickup for you. And the next card is Darkhawk. Obviously, Darkhawk was really strong when Zabu was kind of dominating the meta. We today got some information about nerfs to Zabu, and it seems like Zabu is going to be a 2-drop that decreases your 4 cost cards by 1 now. So Darkhawk I think is still playable. However, keep in mind that it does cost 6,000 tokens, so it's pretty expensive. I don't think Darkhawk's the best card necessarily, especially given that Zabu should be a little bit less powerful than before, but I think it still provides decent value. So I'm going to put it up in the second tier here. Dazzler, obviously I don't have Dazzler. I think very few people do, and I think that's for a good reason. I think she's probably one of the weakest cards to come out last month, and kind of the data around win rates, play rates, etc. kind of confirms that. So I'd put her in the Whales only category. Obviously I don't expect her to downgrade to Series 4 for a couple months, so unless you have, almost every other card in the game, I wouldn't waste your tokens on Dazzler at the moment. Definitely not worth 6,000 tokens in my opinion. Now Galactus is one of the cards, along with Thanos, that the devs at Second Dinner have stated that they are going to stay in Series 5 for quite some time just because of how epic they are. Kind of like the big, big villains of the game at the moment. So I don't expect these to rotate, and they're going to be at Series 5, 6,000 tokens for quite some time. But with that said, they're still pretty good cards. I think both are very playable in the meta. Obviously, things are going to change with the introduction of new cards this month, but I think both of these offers decent value even at 6,000 tokens, and given the fact that they're not really going to get any cheaper anytime soon, I think they're both decent pickups if you want to play the decks that they enable. We'll move on to Helicarrier. Helicarrier is kind of in the same boat as Agent Coulson Atuma. Definitely not the strongest card, so if you don't have it by now, definitely I'd wait a month to see if it drops down into Season 3, maybe you can get it for free. Now, Null, I think the only application for Null at the moment is really in the Galactus deck. So if you have Galactus or are planning on purchasing Galactus, Null could be okay, but again, Null is really expensive right now at 6,000 tokens. And Null might rotate down next month if my expectations come to fruition here. So I'm going to put in the for fun category. If you really want to play like the Null Galactus deck right now, I think that, and you have the 6,000 tokens to spare, I think that'd be the only case for buying Null at the moment if you don't have them already. Maria Hill and M'Baku are both in the wait for drop category here. As I mentioned, I expect those to rotate down next month. Orca was added late to the game. It was supposed to drop in December, but it took the devs, there was some issue with it, so it took the devs a while to add it to the game. I don't really expect it to rotate down immediately, but given that Orca's also a pretty bad card, probably put in the Whales only category at the moment. I mean, nobody really plays this. There's just better stuff out there if you want a big 6-drop at the end of the game. Next card is Sauron, which fits exactly into one archetype, the like Typhoid Mary, Red Skull, Ebony Maw deck. Obviously that deck plays Shuri quite a lot. Sauron, even though it's still Series 5 and 6,000 tokens, I think it's a very strong card actually. And even though I said it may rotate down at the end of the month, I'm going to put Sauron up here at decent value. Probably above Darkhawk at the moment, given that Zabu is going to be nerfed. The only problem, as I mentioned, is that it really only fits into one style of deck. So if you like that deck and want to pick up Sauron, I think that's a pretty decent choice. But obviously, if you want to wait a month and see if Sauron drops down and into Series 4, you can maybe wait a few weeks and pick it up for half the price. Next card is Sentry, which is in Series 5. Definitely along with one of the weakest cards in the game at the moment, along with Dazzler and Orca. As I mentioned in my kind of review that I did when it came out, The only like big payoff for Sentry is Viper, and that combo is kind of, I don't know, not really that consistent, and 4-8 is kind of a mediocre stat line anyway, so for that reason, that's one of the reasons why you don't really see Sentry around that much. So I kind of put in the whales only category. It's like a fun kind of meme card at the moment, but maybe, you know, in the future it might be okay with some more support, but by then it should probably rotate down a series or two and you can probably pick it up for cheaper by then. Shadow King was the last card released in January. It's kind of one of the more unique but also niche tech cards in the game at the moment. Silver Surfer is getting nerfed as well, so it's going to make Shadow King a little less relevant. I'd probably put in the maybe for fun. It's kind of like in between for fun and whales only category. I think 6,000 tokens is a lot for a card that has kind of really limited use. I mean, obviously nobody's going to be playing around Shadow King and nobody's going to be expecting Shadow King, so if you have like a lot of fun surprising your opponent and maybe getting some 4 8-cube games just off of that factor alone, Shadow King might be worth it for you. But there's certainly more powerful, more versatile cards to pick up for 6,000 tokens than Shadow King at the moment. But yeah, so I think Shadow King kind of like is in between the for fun / whales only category. Shana, the She-Devil, obviously the Zabu nerf affects Shana a little bit, but I don't think Shana's terrible. Maybe a little bit above Shadow King for me personally. But there's a reason why you don't see her played all that often. She's just not that strong. Kind of like a just okay, reasonable card, but not that great. I think probably maybe you can, if you really like the Zoo style decks and want Shana, you can maybe wait a month and see if she drops down and pick her up for 3,000 instead. So Shuri, the next card, was rotated down last month, or this month rather, and now is 3,000 tokens. I think Shuri is easily one of the best value pickups at the moment if you don't already have her. As I mentioned before, she works with like the Sauron, Red Skull, Typhoid Mary deck, but even if you don't have Sauron, I think that deck is still very strong. She also works in, you know, a lot of other decks as well. You can also play like Vision or Captain Marvel with Shuri. Yeah, so I think she's one of the better cards to pick up in the shop at the moment, and kind of fits into like a few different style of decks. So definitely consider her if you're kind of on the fence on whether you should spend tokens on her or not. Now, Silver Surfer also got the nerf. Along with Zabu, the Silver Surfer is giving +2 tier 3 drops now, I believe. And kind of like how Black Panther rotated down last month, I expect Silver Surfer to rotate down on the next drop. So, given that, all that, I think Silver Surfer is still pretty strong, but at 6,000 tokens, I think it may be a little overpriced. I mean, if you haven't had Silver Surfer for the past 2 months, I don't think you're going to start playing him now, especially now that he's a bit weaker. So I think, to be fair, I still think he's a very strong card. I still think he'll see some play, but I'm going to put him in the for fun category because, yeah, I just don't think he's not going to be as dominant as he was for the past couple months. So if you don't have him, I probably wouldn't spend 6,000 tokens on him at the moment, since you're going to be getting him in the weaker state, unfortunately. Let's see. Next card, Super Skrull. I think Super Skrull was a little playable in like Zabu decks. Kind of like a meta call if you're running into a lot of like Devil Dinosaurs, cards like that. Certainly kind of like in the same realm of Shadow King. A little bit of a meme card, but certainly can steal some games for you. So I kind of put him in like the for fun category. Somewhere around there. I think he's an okay card to pick up for 3,000 if you have, you know, none of the better cards that are above. But not going to be the strongest, most like efficient use of your tokens at the moment. Valkyrie, I'm a little bit on the fence about where to put Valkyrie. So Valkyrie was very good kind of when she, for the month or two after she came out. But with the introduction of Zabu and a lot more ongoing cards in the meta, like Devil Dinosaur and Darkhawk, her effectiveness kind of decreased a little bit, but given that, with that said, I still think she's a pretty good card, pretty fun to use, and she's only 3,000 tokens now, so I'm gonna put her, I don't know, I think there's a case to be made to putting her on best value, but I just don't think she's on the same level as like Bast and Shuri, which also costs 3,000 tokens. So maybe I'll put her like, I don't know, kind of like in the middle of the decent value category. We'll have to see how the meta shakes out after the Silver Surfer and Zabu nerfs to really kind of get a gauge on how strong she is, if those nerfs helped her at all. But I picked her up when series drop happened. I've been having some fun with her. Yeah, so I think she's a pretty good pickup if you want to try out kind of like the style of decks that she enables. And of course we have Zabu, so anybody who didn't pick up Zabu in the season pass, unfortunately is going to get the weekend nerfed Zabu. And since he is in Series 5, 6,000 tokens, I think he's definitely not going to be as strong as he used to be. Obviously, for the past month, he's been one of the best cards in the game. I think he's still going to be very good. Any card that reduces energy cost is, has a chance to be broken. I just don't think he's going to be as broken as before. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in the decent value category. Maybe here. I still think he'll be pretty good. Maybe above Sauron. He might still be one of the best cards in the game, to be honest. But I think we'll have to wait and see a little bit. Obviously, he's not going to be as strong and as dominant as he was for the past month. So if you don't already have Zabu, unfortunately, like with Silver Surfer, you're going to be, if you want to purchase him through the token shop, you're going to be getting the weekend version. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the new cards that are going to be introduced. Obviously, there's, a lot of speculation here on my part to how strong these cards are going to be. I'll probably release individual videos on these cards when it's closer to their release, but I'll give kind of like my initial thoughts here and kind of like a summary into which cards I think are worth picking up. So the first one is Stature, which costs 1 if your opponent has discarded a card this game. Now this obviously only works with 2 cards at the moment that can force your opponent to discard cards, which are Moon Knight and Black Bolt. Now I think Black Bolt is just terrible. Discarding the lowest cost card in your opponent's hand on turn 5 is basically like doing nothing. I don't know if having a 1/7 is worth running Black Bolt in your deck, but it might be worth running Moon Knight in your deck. So 1/7 might be strong enough just to run Moon Knight alone. And I think that could be a pretty powerful effect. We'll have to see like kind of if that playstyle has a place in the meta after the Zabu Silver Surfer nerfs. But I'm going to put Stature kind of like in a decent value category. I mean 1/7s is very strong. Obviously like Ebony Maw is a 1/7 but has a much stronger drawback, and you can't play it like on the last turn. Being able to play a 1/7 on the last turn and outputting anything more than like 15 power, let's say, can obviously be a pretty big surprise to your opponent and win you a lot of games that you may not be expected to win otherwise. So for that reason, I think Stature is going to be a pretty good card. And maybe bring Moon Knight more at the forefront of the meta. I'm still not sure. Kind of on the fence about Black Bolt since his effect is so bad. But his effect and stat line combined actually are really bad. But we'll wait and see. So I think Stature is decent value at the moment. Now Ghost is a really interesting kind of tech card. She says that your cards reveal last, so even if you have priority heading into like the last turn, let's say, then it means that all your cards will flip at the end and you're basically ceding your priority to your opponent. Now we don't know if the priority switch can happen mid-turn, for instance if you play Ghost on the last turn, or if you have to play Ghost preemptively before the turn actually happens. So obviously if Ghost can flip priority mid-turn, that'll make her a lot stronger, but even if she doesn't, I still think she's a pretty decent card. You obviously want to run her with reactive cards like Shang-Chi, to some extent Enchantress. She could very well help cards like Shadow King become a lot stronger. So I think she is going to be a really strong card. I'd probably put her in a decent value category as well. I think, you know, I'm not so sure how the reactive style of deck will be in the new meta, but if you do like playing those types of decks, I think Ghost would be a very fine addition. It's just that for the past couple months with Silver Surfer and Zabu running wild, we haven't had a chance to, you know, really see those type of decks shine, but maybe we will after the post-nerf. The next card, Living Tribunal, evenly spreads your stats across all lanes at the end of the game. Now, I think this card is really, really interesting. I think actually pretty darn good, from what I can tell. So the way I kind of figure this card to be working is you can use cards like Storm and Goose to lock your opponent out of lanes, and then kind of focus all your power into one lane, and then use Living Tribunal on turn 6 to then spread your power across those lanes, and then more often than not, you're probably going to win the 2 lanes that your opponent is going to have trouble getting power into. I think that's kind of like the style of deck that I think would best fit this effect. And I think you've kind of seen that playstyle experimented with a little bit in the past. You know, people would run cards like Storm and Goose, and then try to like use cards like Doctor Doom, White Tiger, Arnim Zola, stuff like that to get into the locked out lanes while your opponent can't. So for that reason, I think Living Tribunal is going to be a pretty good card. Probably not as good as Bass and Shuri, but I think it'll, like, I'm always in favor, like, I'm always going to rate higher cards that enable certain archetypes or new archetypes of decks, and I think Living Tribunal does that. So for that reason, I'm putting Living Tribunal up at best value. And if you like playing the style of decks, I think, you know, even at 6,000 tokens, I think could be a pretty good pickup. And the last card that I'm putting in, I think, is probably the best card that's coming out this month, and that is Kang the Conqueror. So it's a 5/0, and Kang allows you to see what your opponent's play is, and then you basically redo the turn. Now, for people that were playing in the beta and played Magic when Magic could be played on turn 6, I think these two will serve a similar function. A lot of people, myself included, played Magic a lot on turn 6 to get information on what your opponent was doing, and then you could, you know, react accordingly. And I think Kang serves a very similar function, and in some ways is better. Obviously, some ways is worse because your opponent can change their play. But I think for people that kind of like playing the information gathering, kind of like cerebral mind game style of deck, I think Kang is going to be very, very, very good. And the card I'm most excited about, I think, is going to go in best value. I'm saving for Kang. And I think if you know, you like playing this type of reactive, cerebral kind of decks, I think Kang will be a very good addition to the game. So, yeah, there we have it. So, this is kind of my list here. Obviously, you're free to, you know, let me know if you have any disagreements or think I've missed any points on any of these cards. Feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll probably be talking more about each of the newer cards as they come out, but for now, I hope this gives you a good idea on what to expect in the next month or so in Marvel Snap, and maybe which cards in Series 4 and Series 5 to look out for as you save your collector's tokens. Alright, thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.